Welcome, welcome, welcome. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. Wow, we've been doing this for a long time, but every time it gets me pumped up, just like Rocky. All right. So you're listening to the Ask Brien radio show. We've been doing this for a while. It is a business show every Thursday, 1 to 2 p.m. on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM radio. Each week we try to interview somebody that either A, can teach us something about business, or B is regarding a founder of a company that has created some great concept or teaching something about business. And this week we have a combination of both, which is typical for our situation here. And everybody always asks, why is Brien spelled with an E? Because everybody they know, Brien spells the name B-R-Y-A-N or B-R-I-A-N, and we spell it B-R-I-E-N. And we're not from Ireland. We're not the O'Briens. This is not the O'Brien show, although maybe we should recall the name. We'll change it, the O'Briens, okay? But or kind of like Family Feud, right? They have the O'Brien family from blah 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 blah.
Oh,
right.
It's like Family Feud, all right. Yeah.
Put up your dukes. That's why I have the Rocky part.
Right. I just need to be able to slam down the button every now and then.
That would not be very empathetic, All right. Ooh,
no, it wouldn't.
I got you in with that one. All right. Mm-hmm. All right. So, Traci, my co-host, or our co-host, we have a couple of questions, and people want to know why Brien is spelled with an E. And they say you're an expert. So I want to understand what that whole concept is about Brien E. expert.
Well, I don't know who they say is, but Traci says that I'm an expert in the E's.
Is Traci with an E? Is it T-R-A-C-E-Y?
No, Traci with an I, but an E for expert. But, speaking of slamming down on some buttons, I think my most favorite E is our engineer, Jen. So give a shout out to Jen.
Thank you. Thanks, Trace.
And feel free to slam down on the buttons with Peter at any point in time.
Well, I need something other than applause and whistle and the yay. I need I have the buzzer.
The buzzer's pretty good, actually.
The buzzer's
like
good. Yeah. That one's good.
That was for you talking, Traci.
I might need a group like Boo or something. I'll see if I can get on that.
No, we need to get that horn from the clown.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
Like the Marx Brothers?
Yes.
Oh, my gosh. The next time we never have challenges finding an expert for our podcast, but if we ever do get in a bind, we can just do one full episode on sound effects. That would be great.
I told you when I went to the bathroom that was private.
Oh, my.
Okay, I don't need those sound effects. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. No,
yes.
thank you.
No, thank you. Okay, let's get back on track here. So
Please.
other than our fabulous engineer and her library of sound effects, which we're not going to dig into today, we have our experts that I mentioned, and today is no exception. We have a fantastic expert today, and our experts are typically someone who has at least 10,000 hours dedicated to their business category or niche, and most often way more than 10,000 hours. But if you're curious about how that math works, Peter likes to put me on the spot to do the math every show, so I'm just going to let it out there, which is 40 hours a week, approximately 50 to 52 weeks a year. If you don't take a vacation, would take you, up to 5 years to get that expert status. But, we know for a fact that if you're starting and running a business, you're working way more than 40 hours usually, not to scare anybody off who's listening right now thinking about starting a business. But yeah, you got to get in the trenches. And so you could shortcut that by probably a couple years and still get those 10,000 hours. And you can shortcut it even more if you listen to the Ask Brien radio show and podcast. So you can shave some of that time off that because we're shortcutting your learning curve. And speaking of learning, our show is all about education, and we are really focused. Our mission, our values, everything we do is about educating entrepreneurs to really be able to grow and scale their businesses. And we like to do that with enthusiasm, right, Peter?
And the biggest one, energy!
Ooh, you switched it up on me. What are you thinking? I wasn't prepared for that. All right. Okay, well, then I get to say, and excitement. And, of course, the one trait that Peter lacks, but I have in abundance, is empathy. And I think Jen also has a lot of empathy for me as well.
Yes.
This is a business. Can't be dealing with empathy.
No feelings allowed. Yes.
No feelings allowed. It's like,
Yeah,
what did Rodney Dangerfield said? This game isn't for sissies.
Yeah.
No, I think he said something about no respect, but I'll just save that for a later conversation.
That also applies, yeah.
Equally. Another E.
Equally as disrespectful, which has pretty much been this whole show so far. And so let's get it back on track with talking about my favorite E and then bringing on our fabulous guest.
Oh, that sounds great. And we all know that Traci, for many, many years, has loved the show Grease, and she likes the movie Grease because it has one of her favorite actresses of all time, great Olivia Newton-John.
Yes, the great Olivia Newton-John, because she was electrifying in her day. And so
you kind of jumped out there. I
so,
mean, I thought it's Grease Lightning is what?
Well, I thought you were changing things up on me, but
I do. I have to. I'm a
is
lawyer.
the
That's what we do for a living. We change it up.
Yes, but just try not to treat our guests like it's a deposition, if you don't mind. That would be great.
No, don't worry. We'll be talking about the hush money trial in New York. All right. Without any further ado, ADIEU. Love that word. Why? Only one consonant, all vowels.
One vowel, all vowels, one consonant. I have dyslexia, so it's one of those.
Anyway, our guest is now saying, what did I get myself into? How did I get here? And I'll never do this again. But without any further ado, we do have Audrey Joy Kwan. Are you there?
Hello.
Hope you like that intro.
Hello.
All right.
Hello. I love the intro. I love the energy, guys. I wish I had more of that energy in my life.
Oh, that's a great one.
So we can come to your house if you want. Yeah, we're up for a road trip.
That's borderline harassment. Okay, go ahead.
Or stalker.
Exactly. I'll leave that to your side, Traci.
I've got to prepare myself for all that extroverted energy.
Exactly. So, couple questions, Audrey. People, and if it's okay to call you Audrey, a lot of people don't know what your background is, and I know you're working on something. We're going to discuss that, but try to give a little bit of a background, your first job, and how you got to where you are today in your new company, and then we're going to spend the rest of the show on that item.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I was raised in marketing agencies, so it's natural that I own a consulting company, and it's called AJK Consulting, which is the acronym for my name, which is Audrey Joy Kwan, and we help agencies leverage systems, processes, and leadership to get agency owners back more time and freedom. I'm also a community host and a podcast host, and our community is called Agency Together. So we have a community and network where we help agency owners leverage collaborations to get more referrals, and our podcast is called Small But Mighty Agency. So you can see that everything I do is revolved around the agency world. And I say that I was raised in agencies because my first job at a university were in marketing, creative, and communication agencies. So I held roles like coordinator, manager, and director before I went client side. So if you work for an agency, you know that client side means that the client hires you to work in their business. And that's what happened to me. Clients hired me to work in their business to grow their marketing team. And I thought that would be my life. I thought that would be climbing the corporate ladder until, I retire, but it turned out very differently. I had a big wake-up call in my career, and the wake-up call was something very personal. My mom was diagnosed with cancer, and she passed away in 3 weeks. So she was literally in another city, called and said, I wasn't feeling well, came home, went to the hospital, and never checked back out. And that changed my life. It gave me a wake-up call because it made me look at what I was doing with my work and my career. And I wished a lot of things from my mom. She was always busy, not very present. She thought about work all the time, never took vacations. And her passing was the seed to start my business. She was this inspiration. And I wanted to help business owners change the reality of what a lot of busy business owners' life looks like. And I want to help them get more freedom back in their life. And that's exactly what I help agency owners do now. I've always wanted to have a big impact. I've always wanted to do meaningful work. I just didn't know that would be in the entrepreneurial form until my mom passed away. But long story short, I finished a master's degree in communications that was focused on organizational development. I quit that corporate career of 12 years and started this consulting business. We're actually 10 years in now, and about 5 years ago, we sold and exited an agency, and that's when we added in strategic advisory and coaching to our services to help the agency owners scale their business and have better leadership.
So just a couple of quick questions. You said you spent 12 years doing, were you working specifically for an agency in communications, or what exactly were you doing for that 12-year period?
In those 12 years, I was working in agencies. So when I say working in agencies, typically to climb an agency ladder, there are different roles, and especially when you look at client servicing roles. And so they were a coordinator role, a manager role, a director role. And then after that director role, I was brought into client side, which means a client that an agency serves hires me to work in their agency, or in their business, I should say. And my role was to help that business build their marketing teams. Because in the agency, what we do is marketing. So we run marketing projects for our clients. And sometimes when a client gets to a certain place, it might not make sense for them to continue to hire an agency. They just want to build an in-house team. And so they brought me on to do that.
Is that kind of like a fractional CFO or a fractional attorney? Is along those lines where, and do you know what a fractional CMO is?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I think these days that the word fractional is way more popular than back then. Like my career has been 20 some odd years. So when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, the whole idea of a fractional CMO wasn't as popular. And at that point in time, I wasn't really fractional. They actually brought me in as a full-time employee to work in their organization.
And the last question I have before we get into what you're currently doing, were you on the content side, on the creative side, or because you said you weren't on the client part, were you doing that, or you were actually managing the accounts, or what exactly were you doing?
I was managing the account. So if you work in an agency, there is typically a person that is a strategist, and they also support client projects. So that was my role. It was a client strategy and client management type of position inside agencies.
Super. And when you decided exactly around the time that your mom's unfortunate passing, is that when you decided to start, or was it like a year later, or how close in time we're talking?
Yeah, so I think when my mom passed, it was literally a 2-year trajectory. So after my mom passed, I looked at what I was doing, and I realized it just wasn't on purpose. It wasn't the purposeful life that I really wanted for myself. And it took me some time to really figure out, how do I take what I had accomplished so far in my career and turn that into a business where I was leaning upon the experience that I had and the skills that I had, but also making an impact that was relevant to where I was at that point in time in my career, which is wanting to help business owners get back more freedom. Because I saw my mom and I saw the life that she led, and I saw that if she had, like in my brain and the way that I saw it was that if my mom only had the right systems and the right type of leadership, or at least had more training in those things and more support in those things, she wouldn't have not lived her life. And when I look at her life and I say not lived her life, what I mean by that is she was just not present. Like if you think of someone who entered their weekend, and half the time they were thinking about work and couldn't be really present with their grandchildren. That was my mom, and I saw that life that she lived, and I felt like there could have been a better way for it. In fact, I know there was a better way for it if she only knew how, and that's the impact that I want to make. So I really combined my experience working with agencies and in agencies, combined with my education, and then really what I saw my purpose in life was, and created this business.
And so when you started out, was it just you, or did you have partners?
When I first started out, it was me and one other person, and that's all we needed. Like, I say this to new business owners all the time. When I quit my job, like I literally just quit my job with my life savings, and I started a business with the life savings. And at that time, I brought in one part-timer to help me. And all I needed was one great client. And I had that. I had one great client. I had someone come to me and say, hey, Audrey, I see all your experience in working with agencies. I have an agency right now. They were at that time, the agency that I was helping at that time, they were at like a $300K revenue, and they were growing quite aggressively. And of course, they wanted to hit multiple seven figures, which we did. We helped them hit multiple seven figures. And so with myself and one other in the business, we were able to provide consulting and coaching to help them do that.
Yeah, so this was a person that you had previous experience with, that you had worked with previously?
Yeah, I think you hit a major point there. One key thing that I had working for me was when I left my job, I really leaned heavy into my network. And because I had a 12 years experience in that network, launching a business was easier. And I say easier because anyone who's ever started a business knows that it's not easy by any means. It requires a lot of hard work, but it was easier because I had built out this network. I had a track record of success in the career that I had. And so when someone had reached out to me and said, hey, I see what you're doing right now, I could use your help, it was in part because they knew about the career that I had, but also the results that I had in my career.
Great. And then, so that was, did you have any other clients, or was it just this one client when you started?
I started with one client, and then about, I would say it was a little under a year later, one client became two. And then a few months later, two became four. And then I would say at the end of the second year, I think I had like 7 clients. Yeah, so it took some time to ramp up, but I actually appreciated that it took time to ramp up because it allowed me to get my processes and systems in place to manage more clients, right? And I think that's how small businesses tend to explode when they don't take the time to look at their growth and figure out what they need to put into place to grow strategically without blowing up. And for me, that kind of growth, that slower growth, allowed me to put in the right processes and systems in place and also bring in more people onto my team.
So we have about 10 seconds. This is going to be quick, and we'll talk about it after the break. But the question is, when you started out with these people here, did you get them through ads? Did you get them only through networking, or was there other ways that you got these initial 7?
And that's the beauty. It was straight up networking and referrals that I built my business upon the first 2 years.
Wow, super.
I did not do ads. I did not pay. If I did anything on social media, it was organic. But for the most part, it was networking, connections, and referrals.
Great. We're going to be taking a break. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220, 98.1 FM. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. Like no other station in the world. Yeah, like no other station in the world. Who does that?
It gets me every time. I don't know why. I know it's coming, and it still gets me. All right, so we are back, and I am just enthralled with all of, being an agency owner myself. I love hearing how you work with your clients in scaling their agencies. I know firsthand how challenging that can be. So I'd love to hear, your line, I'm borrowing it from your website, the proof is in the profits. So share with us some case study stories about how you've worked with other agencies.
Yeah, that's great. When we typically work with agencies, we are looking at their systems and processes, right? So anytime we come into a business, in order to scale properly, we have to look at how do we get things automated, and that's systems and processes. But what we do know, and with all our clients, the one thing that has to happen for any business to work well is leading people well. And when we work with clients, that's what we're focused on, helping them lead well, as well as looking at the systems and processes, right? But I think people really forget that leadership is a key thing when we want to grow a business. And, if I were to look at one core principle of leadership, it's this. People often think that leadership is leading a team, and sure, it's a team of people, but leadership is about meeting individuals where they are and leaning into those individual strengths. And that's a core thing we do with our agency owners is we are working with them to maximize the strengths of the individuals in their businesses. Now, what do all our clients really want for their businesses? Well, they want happy, productive, and effective leaders. We all do, right? You don't want great people to turn over. And when great people turn over, it's because we have poor leaders. Typically, it's because we have poor leaders. And if you're a business owner, you know that replacing an employee costs anywhere between 30% to 50% of their salary. And that cost goes to hiring and training. And sometimes you lose more great people along the way, which costs you money. Not to mention, especially in an agency type of business, you could also see clients churn when you lose great people. And so the work that we do is to ensure that our agency owners are not only leading effectively, but they are watching their bottom line by ensuring they keep the best people on their team. The biggest struggle that we see with the agency owners that we work with is that we like to think that it's working with bosses who are not nice that is truly the struggle and why people turn over, right? And sure, I think that is the case, right? There are bad bosses out there, but it's also when leaders are not effective in giving people good direction or leading well. And I think when people feel directionless, they also leave a company. Being a really nice boss means you're focused on wanting your team to love working with you, and you're super helpful, but it doesn't mean the team's effective. And that's what we really aim to do when we work with our agency owners, is really to ensure that the team is effective, right? Because good leadership is not just about being nice. There are so many skills that have to be juggled in leadership. And inside an agency that is growing, so a lot of our clients that we work with, they are starting at the multiple six figures. And when they're at the multiple six figures, the business owner has to start building out their team. And when they start to build out their team, usually they are building out their first leaders in that team. And the challenge with building leaders in a small business is that there is a lot of skills to learn, right? Just to name a few, right? How do you onboard people correctly? How do you manage people? How do you support people to deliver at a high level? And how do you motivate people to show up and do their best work? There's a ton of that, right? And so in our work with our agency owners, we are typically looking at these different challenges and helping them through it. Now, I don't think we can go through every one of those how-tos today, but I'd love to share with you the three foundations that we think are key and are required in order to build an effective team for an agency.
Yes, definitely. I think that would be fantastic information.
Yeah. Well, we think that at AJK Consulting, we think that it begins with these three pillars. We know that it begins with these three key pillars. The first pillar is that leadership is not this one-size-fits-all type of thing. It's about building a common purpose or goal that everyone on the team really works hard to achieve, and helping people feel seen and use their individual strengths to achieve. And building a common purpose often starts with knowing your leadership philosophy. So if you don't know your leadership philosophy, your team won't either. So whether you're new to leadership or maybe you haven't done it before, having that leadership philosophy is just a really good practice. And you might be asking, okay, what is this? What is this thing called leadership philosophy? Traci, do you know what a leadership philosophy is?
Do I know what a leadership philosophy is? Well, I think a leadership philosophy, maybe it's about individual leaders' perspective of how they would answer the question, but my leadership philosophy is to have courageous conversations, to be open to hearing challenges and providing solutions, but also making sure that your team has enough empowerment to be able to solve problems on their own and feel like that they can have courageous conversations back to you, and you can mutually work together to grow and scale.
Yes. So what you're pointing to is things that you prefer and things that you don't prefer. Right? And I always encourage whenever we're working with new leaders in an agency to identify what your leadership philosophy is. And it's as simple as this. It's literally taking out a piece of paper and writing down 3 things, right? Number 1, like, what are your expectations? That's it. What are your expectations? Number 2, how do you operate best? Number 3, what are your values? So that's really your leadership philosophy. If you don't know what those 3 things are, you can bet your bottom dollar that your team will not know what it is. And then the next step is to share that philosophy and ask others about their values and how they operate best. I'll give you an example. So I value transparency. So whenever we're working on something with my team or whenever I'm working with someone new on our team, I ensure that I share that philosophy with them. I tell them that, hey, look, like if you're stuck, let me know and be direct because I value transparency. However, I expect that if you're stuck, you will come to me with at least one solution so we can collaborate on solutions. I'm very clear about that value of transparency and my expectation from that value. And I encourage team members to come to me and share that as well too. I share this with my agency owners to make this a practice, whether it's with their new team members or if they haven't done it with their current team members, to do it. Because what this will help you do is it will help you cut down like 6 months of work of trying to get to know the individual better. That's the first thing, right? Leadership isn't this one size fits all. It is getting to know the individual. And practices like this really help my agency owners cut down the time of getting to know their people on their team.
We're going to listen to the rest after our break for our sponsor. You listen to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220, 98.1 FM. We'll be right back.
And the Ask Brien show wants to say thank you to our sponsor, Legal Steps. That's LEGALSTEPZ with a Z.com. I'm listening to Audrey talk about her initial journey into starting her own business, and somebody on the sidelines listening to that, it can be scary. And certainly if you're sitting here thinking, listening to Audrey's story, it's scary for you as well if you want to start your own business. But at some point you have to jump in, both feet first, right? And you can do that with the help of the experts at legalsteps.com. They make it so easy. So they kind of take away that fear. And I think part of the fear for anybody, for anything that you're ever doing, is the unknown. You're not sure if you're doing the right thing. They will help you through the process of trying to start your own business. So it's kind of just your 101s, if you will. The courses are under $150, so they're very affordable. And the courses I'm talking about are registering a trademark, forming an S corporation, forming an LLC. I took the incorporation course and was able to do it in less than 2 hours. I've got kids running around and dogs barking and that kind of thing. And I picked a time where I could sit down and really focus, take notes if I wanted to. I love that you can stop it. You can rewind it if you missed something, if you missed a point. I really love that you can see what the expert is talking about on your computer screen. You can see their screen as well, like a picture-in-picture. And so you know that you're doing the right thing. You know that you're clicking the right button, filling out the form properly, because certainly with anything legal, you want to make sure that you've done it the right way. So you know that you've got the confidence because you're watching the expert do it. Those experts, by the way, have over 30 years experience. And if you find that you're just stuck and this is not going anywhere for you, the experts at legalsteps.com will just do it for you. They'll take it for you and get you from A to B with ease. Again, go to legalsteps.com, LEGALSTEPZ with a Z.com.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
You listen to the Ask
Almost
Brien.
had it.
Oh, you got it. Great job. Where's the clapping?
Right at the
clap.
very end there, I lost
Do the
it.
clapping.
Yay!
Thank you very much,
You're
Jen.
welcome, of course.
And thank you, Legal Steps. You listen to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. And now, with the remaining answer to Traci's question, You're on.
Yes, now we get to hear about 2 and 3, right? So we want to make sure we get all 3 pillars covered here today.
Yeah. So pillar number 2 is this concept of going from I to we. And the business owners that I work with, typically how they start their business is through a skill. So they're skillpreneur, meaning that they have a skill that they're really good at and they build a business around it. Before you know it, they're at capacity and they need to start building that team, right? And I call this the going from the doer to leader journey. And what I mean by doer to leader journey, typically when you're a doer, you're accustomed to being the problem solver. Right? And when you're a leader, actually, your job is less problem solve the immediate item that's in front of you and empower others to solve that problem, right? So that's a doer to leader journey. The pillar number 2 is learning to understand what the doer to leader journey looks like. And that means that you got to stop solving the actual problem that's right in front of you, i.e. you've got to stop giving people the answers to the problems and help them figure out those answers themselves. And typically, as a business owner, your ability to resolve issues quickly is what got you to where you are. You can think quick on your feet, and you can get things out the door very quickly, and you're just prone to snapping your fingers and getting things solved. But that habit can really shoot you in the foot as you grow the team. And practicing restraint is important. It's easy to step back from, it's not easy to step back from the front line of it's not easy to step back from the front line of solving problems, right? And go to directing people and helping them understand how to solve problems. Now, one of the key skills that we look at when you go from the doer to leader journey, one of the key pillars is learning to ask better questions. So rather than asking the yes and no questions, because yes and no questions don't create critical thought among your team, it's better to ask questions that are open-ended to create more critical thinking. So for example, a yes and no question is, hey team member, hey person on the team, do you know how to insert tasks? Right? And that is a yes or no question because the answer will be yes or no. But a better way to ask a question is to instead ask them, first of all, share the goal, and then ask them to share what they think the next best steps are. And a better question would sound like this. We need to implement this project to achieve this goal. What milestones or things do we need to consider in order to get the goal achieved? Now, this answer is going to give you a lot more insight than a yes and no question because you're going to be able to see the thinking behind that question. Other good questions that generate good critical thinking are questions like, have you thought of insert the actual solution? Have you thought of this? Okay, if they answer yes, then you might say, okay, share with me how you thought it through, right? You really want to plug into asking better questions, and that really means moving away from the yes or no's. Now, sometimes a leader or a business owner can be so close to the challenge that they have in front of them that they actually end up creating more work for themselves, right? And that's also part of the journey from going from a doer to a leader. And when you're a doer, you look at the challenge that's in front of you and you create the solution. But when you're leading a team, that might actually create more work for you. I'll give you a good example of a client of mine, James. James has a small full-time agency. It's a very small agency of about 4 people, including himself. And he was having a hard time getting his designers to present to their clients in a way that he feels builds client trust. So his initial approach was to be the person who solves the problem by imposing himself into the process. He started to attend all concept presentations and stepping in to save his team. And he was really starting to feel like he was stuck and drained because that's where he was spending his time. Now, he had tried to tell his team, this is how you do it, and he gave them standard operating procedures, but the thing that they were missing, the team was missing, was the confidence, the flair that they needed to be effective in these meetings. Now, empowering the team actually looks different than what he was doing. Going from the doer to the empowerer looks like this, right? We looked at the makeup of his team, i.e. identified the individual strengths, and we really noticed that a large part of the team, the members, were introverted. And we decided that in order to empower his team, we need to look at how do we use that introversion to our advantage. Well, first of all, we added a KPI for that quarter to increase the confidence levels of the team by 50%. And we did that not by having James teach his team how to do these presentations, because that would have taken James a long, long time. But instead, we built a safe space for these introverted individuals to actually practice presenting. So every week for 3 months, we rotated on a team member bringing a presentation to that meeting to practice. And they would receive open feedback and they would comment on each other's work. Now, not only did this practice help the team gain momentum, but the team members could see each other practicing and witness the mistakes and learn from that. By doing that for once a week for 3 months, the team was able to take on all the presentations without having James involved, but more so James was confident that he could step out. He could see his team improving. He could actually step out, right? And this is a great example of a leader that is going from being a doer to actually empowering the team. Because rather than doing the work of showing up in these presentations, he was now looking at opportunities to better empower his team so that he could step out.
We're going to have to take a break.
Yeah.
We're going to have to take a break. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220, 98.1 FM. We'll let you finish up when we get back. Welcome back. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. And we have a great guest today, Audrey Kwan, and she was talking about leadership. So let's continue that conversation.
Yeah, so we're covering 3 pillars right now. The first pillar that we covered is that leadership is not one size fits all, what that looks like. The second pillar is learn to go from I to we. And this is the last pillar. Last pillar is from time management to priority setting. What do I mean by that? Well, time management is like completing a checklist, right? So you complete a checklist, and by the end of the day, you got everything done equals time management. When you complete the checklist, you get this dopamine hit, and it feels like you've accomplished something. But when you step into leadership, one of the key things you got to do is that you got to identify priorities. You can get stuff done as a leader, i.e., go through a checklist, and it might not matter to your new role as a leader. And that's what I find with a lot of agency owners when they're stepping into managing a team, they've got to remove themselves from being in this, I've got this checklist of things to do, that is equal to time management and doesn't make the actual impact they need to see in their business, to actually setting new priorities and focusing on those priorities while they let the team take over the time management items. That really quickly, in a nutshell, is the third pillar. It's going from time management to priority setting in the business and carving the time out for yourself to focus on those priorities and not getting sucked back into things that your team should be doing because you think that you could do it better. And I say this all the time to my clients, you're never going to get someone who's going to be 100% you, ever. They're not going to be 100% you, right? The goal is not to have someone be 100% you. If they can meet you at the 70 to 80% mark, you are already winning because guess what? They're going to have their own special skills, their own special talents that they can bring to that 70 to 80% that you can't bring. And your job is to step away from handing them over the items that don't require you and to step into priority setting and focusing on the priorities.
Wow.
Such great information. And I feel like that this is a conversation that all people at any phase of entrepreneurship really need to pay attention to and listen to. And I know you've had amazing successes with your existing clients. If someone wants to reach out to you with more questions or if they're interested in working with you, what would be the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah. For this summer, we have 2 client spots left. So here's how we can help you. If you're an agency owner who is at capacity and wants to grow your business and you want more freedom in your business and get out of that day-to-day, let's connect. You can book a consultation over at audreyjoykwan.com/contact. So before you throw spaghetti at the wall and hope that it sticks, like firing and hiring people, let's get your business productized, streamlined, and structured so you can have that lean team that gives you more freedom. And in the free consult, we'll give you a roadmap. You can go to audreyjoykwan.com/contact.
And for all of you who are listening, if you didn't get a chance to write that down, it will be included in the show notes for the podcast. And we encourage you to go check out our podcast if you haven't already. And it is the Ask Brien the podcast. And of course, that's ASKBRIEN, the podcast. And it is released weekly and has all of the archives of all of these amazing conversations like we've had today. And you can find it wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Peter.
All right, so we have 50 seconds left, and that's it. So we're going to have to make it quick. What was your biggest challenge in starting this business?
My biggest challenge starting this business was getting clients in the beginning. It was 100%. It was tapping my network, having conversations with people, helping them understand the impact I could make in their business, especially in that first year when you don't have too many case studies. And it was a lot of grit and hustle in that first year, landing those first few clients.
We only have 10 seconds left, so we'll have to. We're going to actually continue on. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show, KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. Thank you very much. Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Traci. And over and out. Till next week.